Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I want to talk a little bit about automatic knives. What are the different kinds of automatic knife? What makes a knife automatic or a switchblade? That kind of thing. First off, though, a disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. And in fact, the laws for automatic knives and involving them are very, very... They're freaking everywhere, and they're often very vague. And the definition of exactly what meets the legal line of automatic knife, switchblade, whatever, varies from place to place, country to country, even city to city in many cases here in the U.S. So don't take anything I say in this video as legal, anything. If you want to figure out if something's legal to carry or if it's a switchblade, the only law that matters are the ones where you are right now. Don't take this to be legal advice. I'm just kind of highlighting some of the commonly used terms. First off, though, what is an automatic knife? Well, the majority of knives out there are not automatic at all. This is a good example. This is Spyderco Native 5. There are no springs in this. The only way that this blade opens is if I pull it open. Only way that it closes is if I push it closed. There's really nothing, there's no assistance, there's no automaticity about it. But there are other knives that open very quickly that are not automatic. This is an example of a knife with a Carson flipper. Sorry, knife guys, I know a lot of you know this already, but if you press this little protuberance here on the back, the flipper tab, which is actually a part of the blade per se, it is just a piece of blade that sticks out in the back there. If you pull this backwards, that provides enough force for the blade to fire out of there. There is no spring or anything like that, though. This is entirely a manual process. Throughout the process here, it's just on bearings here, but it does fire out just as quickly as any automatic knife. Some municipalities still pass laws against these because they're scared of the universe, but still. But this is not at all automatic. Then, moving a step further are these guys. This is a Kershaw Link, by the way. This was a ZTO 452CF, but the Link here is an assisted knife. What that means is that there's a certain point, I'll kind of nudge the blade open little by little here, and you'll see that at a certain point, a spring takes over and fires the knife the rest of the way out of there. The thing is, though, although these are very often illegal, more commonly than, for instance, non-assisted knives, I think Australia, bans these guys, some other places. Assisted knives are kind of distinct from automatics in that generally you're pressing something on the blade. Maybe you press the thumb stud, maybe you press the flipper tab, and it will not deploy if you're not touching the blade. If you're not opening it somehow or another, the spring will not deploy the knife automatically. What usually makes an automatic, and again, talk to your damn lawyer people, but what usually makes an auto is that there is something on the handle that you can touch that will deploy the blade. So in this little guy, which is an out-the-side automatic, if you press this button here, the blade fires out. I did nothing else. I have not touched the blade at any point in the process. It is now deployed. On this little guy right here, which is a dual-action automatic, if you press this all the way out, the blade fires all the way out. And if you pull it back, the blade fires back into the handle, basically. It's called dual action for that reason. And then on this guy, if you press this button on the handle, boom, you've got a blade flying out of there. So those are usually what people talk about when they're talking about switchblades. One of these three varieties here. You can get, and actually let's just go ahead and talk about kind of the three main varieties that you see out there in the knife market. There are certainly others out there, although they're a lot less common, but usually they kind of break down into one of these three approaches. The first kind of automatic knife that I want to talk about today are these little guys. These are side fire or out the side, or however you'd like to think about them, automatic knives. And this functions basically a lot like a normal knife, and more specifically a lot like an assisted knife, where it's got a spring in there that is, that will help you push the blade open. But in this case, rather than having some kind of a detent which you need to overcome, if you just press this button down, this is actually a button lock. And if you press the button down, the spring just takes over immediately and pulls the blade out and pulls it to full deployment there. And then to close it, usually you just press that button again and then push it back in there. Note that you do have to push here. This is under spring tension at every point here. And so, basically, there's a torsion spring, and if you watch a disassembly on any of these automatics, ProTech Magic, Half-Breed, those kinds of things, you will see, or even on this guy, this is the ProTech Runt, by the way, you'll see that there's a little torsion spring, so pressing this button allows the blade to come flying out the side, but fundamentally it works very similarly to a lot of other pocket knives. An out-the-front automatic, dual action like this guy, both of these are out the front because, well, the blade fires out to either side. And by the way, both of these are exceptionally low quality. These were sent to me by a viewer, I believe my buddy Chris, just basically so I would have a pair of these around for demonstration like this. But an out-the-front dual-action automatic has, and I'd recommend that you actually watch my video on the Benchmade Phaeton. It's, how does an automatic knife work, disassembling and maintaining the Benchmade Phaeton. That's Phaeton or something along those lines. But basically there you can see how the springs are wired, but this works in such a way that when you press the blade out, the spring will basically be allowed to push the blade all the way out, and then it actually catches in a different way. And so here I'm loading back on that spring again, and it's allowed to pull all the way back in. And the nice part about this approach, do I have some paper or something? Yeah, here we go. Let me grab some paper. And there goes the Batman mask. Long day. But anyways, if I've got a piece of paper like this right here, I'm just folding it over twice here, or actually I'll fold it over 3 or 4 times, just in case. I don't know quite the strength of that, but one of the nice things about a double-action auto is that it's got a little bit of safety to it. What you can see here is that this did not fully penetrate the paper. When it was pressed up against something, it wouldn't fire all the way. And it's pretty apparent why that happens when you look at the innards of these guys and how exactly they work. That's one of the advantages. The other advantage of a double-action auto knife is that if you press the button out, the knife goes out. If you pull the button in, the knife goes back in. At no point in time do you ever need 2 hands to operate this knife. And that makes this actually a really good choice for accessibility. If you are a person with one working hand, or at least one hand at all for that matter, out-the-front automatic knives are absolutely the best approach for you because you can get a blade out and a blade back in, and you never need another hand to be involved. Then there's the single-action out-the-front knives. This is, again, a very cheapy sort of knife, and it's actually modeled after, it's kind of an homage to another knife out there. Not a big fan of that aspect of it, but the thing is, it's a good demonstrator piece. Because this is single action. What I mean by that is I press the button, boom, this comes flying out of there with a freaking vengeance. And this one actually happens to be a dagger blade, so it's like extra double freaking illegal pretty much everywhere. But when I press the button again, nothing happens. This knife is now in a very loose state. In fact, there's horizontal vertical blade play. It's not a great affair. In order to retract this blade, what I actually have to do is press the button down and then pull on this little guy here, which basically pulls the spring back into a compressed state. And then when the blade gets all the way to the bottom, you'll see the button pops back out, because actually the button just seats in this little gap here. And so when I'm pulling this in, I'm cocking this spring again, and then when I'm pressing the button, I'm allowing, you'll see this little guy fly to the front there, I'm allowing the blade to go all the way through. A key distinction that we have here is whereas this guy has that safety feature where if you press it up against something, it'll stop, and so it'll probably screw you up, for instance, if you accidentally do it against your hand. It's not going to go right through. A single action auto is going to go probably right through. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so that's a slight difference there, and this is with 4 sheets of paper. Single-action automatics are, as a result, here, we'll try again, because it's kind of fun. Yeah, single actions are just going to power right through. Whatever force is in that spring, it will fire right out of there with. They're harder to pull back in, and so if you're one-handed, this is actually still a two-handed knife. Actually, more so than I would say the side fire, where you can use, for instance, your leg or something like that. The single actions are really a very different affair, and honestly, they're not a kind of automatic I recommend. But each one of these has some pluses and some minuses, and we've kind of touched on that already. The single actions do have the main advantage that they are going to deploy very, very powerfully. This means, well, okay, may not mean, but it happens to be the case that the majority of single-action automatics are really pitched for a self-defense or combat kind of uses. You'll see knives like the Microtech Halo is kind of I think the most well-known single-action auto with a really strong spring in there. It's really, I think, meant for soldiers. It's meant for, press it up against somebody and press the button to kill them. That's ugly, but that's kind of where they're most useful. And they will always deploy reliably because the spring is constantly pushing them out of there. They're a lot less safe, though, in my personal estimation, because if one of these does open in your pocket, guess what? That spring's pushing it right into your femoral artery there. But they are a thing. Double actions, like I said, have the advantage of being very, very one-hand friendly. These are the most accessible pocket knives out there. And so if you've got somebody with limited motor function, and they're also very much not fine motor skill sorts of knives, all you need to be able to do is push your thumb forward or backwards. And especially on a knife like the Benchmade Phaeton, with a great deal of grip pad on the top there, this is going to be an option for a lot of people for whom a knife might not be an option otherwise. And so that's kind of a nice thing. And that's the biggest advantage that the double actions have. That and ease of use. It's very easy to pull out, fire, etc. So that's what double actions have going for them. The out-the-side knives are kind of nice in a lot of ways, and they're kind of my favorite personal kind of automatics. That's not a knock on the double actions. They can be very useful for some people, but these tend to be a nice compromise position because this will always reliably deploy, and especially knives like this little ProTech here, which fire super strongly, this will always deploy when you press the button. And it's relatively safe because you can see here the button is entirely flush. So it's probably not going to deploy in your pocket. And frankly, even if it did, the spring force here is strong, but it's not all that super strong. And so if it's up against the side of your pocket here, it's going to be pretty much safe. I mean, it's a factor, but it's no worse than, for instance, an assisted knife that happens to open in your pocket, etc. The other nice thing about an out-the-side automatic is that these guys, there is really no way to open these except their intended dramatic sort of thing, and this one's loud as heck. Whereas an out-the-side automatic, let's say that you're in the lunchroom, for instance, and you happen to be carrying your ProTech, although this one's not super scary to a lot of people, but you happen to be carrying your ProTech and you need to, open a box or something like that. One thing you can always do is put your fingers right here, pinch the blade, fire it, and then there you go. Is it a slip joint? I don't know. Maybe. Practically speaking, it's not the rest of the time, but it offers that very convenient, subtle two-hand open sort of thing. This may not be a factor for a lot of people, and in fact, a big part of the fun of an automatic knife is the bam sort of thing. But yeah, that's a really nice advantage. These are also a lot simpler to take apart and maintain. I mean, it depends on the model itself, but on this guy, all there is a little torsion spring in there, and so as long as you're a little bit careful and you do the disassembly starting, go ahead and watch one of my videos on that. You do the disassembly starting from this guy, from the open position there so that there's not a compressed spring in there, you're going to be just okay. It's not a problem there. And so yeah, those are the different kinds of automatic knives. The other thing to remember, though, is that any automatic knife, I touched on this earlier, is going to be potentially legally problematic for you. Not only are they much more scary to people, because there is this big thing, oh my God, switchblades, ah! And the people who are going to be terrified are going to be extra terrified by any of these guys. Again, maybe not this guy so much. But, not only is there just the fear factor of people like, oh my God, that legally speaking, they can be problematic. The state of Michigan, where I live in at the moment, only legalized automatics in October of 2017. And the state of Ohio, which is like 40 minutes that away, is absolutely, they are completely and totally illegal. So this is a perfectly reasonable everyday carry right here. But if I drive 40 minutes, guess what? This is a felony. And similarly, in other states, there are weird laws. I believe in California, you can have, this is a California legal automatic. They have to have a blade length under a certain amount for it to be legal there. And so this guy, completely and totally California, illegal, etc. So that's kind of what and just remember that. And it may be illegal to have them shipped to you. It may, there are states in which it's legal to own an automatic knife, but it's illegal to carry one. States where it's just like, oh my God, you're a terrorist if you even look at one of these guys. There are entire countries that are just, no, sorry, case closed. So just keep that in mind. But that's kind of the automatic world. You get your out the sides, your double action out the fronts, your single action out the fronts. Each of them have advantages and disadvantages. Personally, I'm a big fan of the out the sides for the reasons I described, but for accessibility, the double action out the fronts are pretty solid, absolutely 100%. The single actions are, they're fun, we'll put it that way. But there you go. I hope this has been at least slightly interesting. I'm sure that the heavy-duty knife people have already known a lot of this already, but, hey, why not throw it up there? Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.